Hayden Hackney's future was always going to be a huge talking point this summer, and it seems that interest is already starting to build in his signature. Hackney was one of Middlesbrough's top performers over the course of the last couple of campaigns. He's made over 100 appearances for Middlesbrough, scored 10 goals and provided 9 assists in the process. Now, with Middlesbrough failing to get into the playoffs and challenge for promotion, it means that Middlesbrough are in a little bit of a powerless position when it comes to Hayden Hackney. His potential has clearly outgrown the club. He's clearly a player who's on the radar of a number of top clubs in the Premier League and around Europe. So as far as Middlesbrough are concerned, their focus purely has to be on getting the best deal possible. Now, according to reports in the media in the last couple of days, that interest is really starting to kick up, and you do feel like a move might be inevitable at some point this summer. EFL Analysis are reporting that Hackney's decided to change his agent, which is a clear indicator that he is someone who's going to be looking to find a move, whether that be to the Premier League or to somewhere else. Reports from The Sun in the last couple of days have said that Crystal Palace are very, very interested in signing Hayden Hackney. They're plotting a double deal to sign Hayden Hackney and Rav van den Berg in a deal worth around about £27 million. Now, as far as Middlesbrough are concerned, and as far as I'm concerned, to be honest, I think £27 million for those two is a little bit cheap. I think for Hayden Hackney, I'd probably be looking somewhere in the region of £20 to £25 million for Middlesbrough to sell him. He's a player of real quality. And he's someone who is probably one of the best midfielders in the Championship, despite Middlesbrough falling short last season. He's an England under-21 international. He's someone who's got great potential to go on and succeed at the highest level. He's just turned 23 years of age, so he's still a very young player as well, with certain potential to grow and develop. And it does feel like now could be the right time for Middlesbrough to cash in on him, and for Hackney to take that step. It does take a little while for players to adjust to life at a higher level. And I think for Hackney, he is still young enough where that move would make sense for him, and it would offer him the opportunity to really kick on and show what he's capable of. I think in football, it's also the case that the players sometimes can leave it a little bit too long. I think if Hackney was to leave it another year or another 2 years, all of a sudden there's a new kid on the block, a player who's 20, 21 years of age, and they're the players who are a slightly more attractive proposition for clubs in the Premier League and around Europe due to the potential that they offer and the prospect of being able to sell them on. So it does feel like this summer is going to be the pivotal one for Hayden Hackney. If he is to move on, it does feel like Middlesbrough are really sort of bracing themselves for interest. I think as far as Hackney is concerned, I think he certainly does have the other potential to move on. But I think for Middlesbrough, the challenge will be on how do they replace Hayden Hackney. Obviously, that money that would come in, should it be £25 million for him, that would be a great start. It's a great way of getting money into the pockets of the club. I think we've seen in the last few windows that Middlesbrough won't be going out and using that whole sum of money on a replacement for Hayden Hackney. It's highly unlikely that they'll be using all of that sum of money to spend on new players full stop. So I think for Middlesbrough, it would be a case of sticking to the current recruitment model and trying to sign someone with high potential, whether it's someone coming in from abroad or developing someone from the academy, someone that they can get for a relatively cheap fee, and hopefully looking to sell them on. But I think certainly from a PSR point of view, an FFP sort of point of view, it would be a great deal from Middlesbrough, because obviously Hayden Hackney's come through the youth academy, and he is someone who would offer pure profit if he was to be sold on. So it's going to be a really, really interesting few weeks for Middlesbrough. It does sort of feel like an inevitable deal. I think there's other players in the Middlesbrough squad who you sort of look at and you feel that they could potentially leave. They may well stay. I think everyone that you sort of speak to, or any podcasts that you listen to, or creators on YouTube or wherever it might be, everyone that seems to be under the same impression that it's almost inevitable that Hayden Hackney will be moving on. It seems almost impossible that he'll be starting the season with Middlesbrough. And that's quite rare, the fact that it's so likely and so kind of accepted that he is going to be moving on. But that's how good a player he is. I think if Crystal Palace were the club that were going to be coming in for him, I think that would be a great place for him to go. They've got a real track record in the last couple of seasons of developing players from the Championship and turning them into absolute superstars. You've got the likes of Michael Olise, who obviously came to Crystal Palace from Reading, and he's gone to Bayern Munich. You've got Eberechi Eze, who came from QPR, and he's turned into an absolute superstar as well. He's a full England international now and a regular at that. He's attracting interest from Tottenham and Arsenal. You only have to look at people like Mark Gahey as well, who he arrived from Chelsea, but he earned the move to Crystal Palace based on the back of a spell with Swansea City, and have also Crystal Palace also moved for people like Conor Gallagher, who had spent time on loan with clubs in the EFL as well. So it's clearly a club who sort of appreciate the market in the AFL, and they know players that come through there, and they can scout them, and they can spot that potential to step up to the Premier League. And it does seem like Hayden Hackney potentially could be the next one to do that. I know we've mentioned Rav van den Berg. He's another player on their list, and another player that I've just mentioned there, Mark Gahey, could have a key role to play in that, because Gahey is on the radar of a number of clubs in the Premier League, the likes of Liverpool and Chelsea and Tottenham. They're all interested in Gahey, and so Rav van den Berg could potentially be a replacement for him. But I'll probably do a video on him separately at some point. But certainly for Hayden Hackney, I think a move to Crystal Palace will be a good one. Bayer Leverkusen are another club who have been linked, and we've seen a lot of English players head over to Germany and do really, really well there. It would also offer him the opportunity of playing in the Champions League, which would be a huge pull for a player like Hayden Hackney. I mean, it would be a great opportunity to show what he can do on the highest level, which would be great for him. And it would do his prospects of breaking into the England senior squad the world of good as well. There's a lot of competition in the middle of the park. So for Hayden Hackney, he does need to, you do feel like for his international hopes, he will need to move on from Middlesbrough and establish himself at a top club. And it does sort of feel like this summer is going to be the perfect time in which to do that. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting few weeks for Middlesbrough. They will need to get a good fee in. They won't be forced into selling him. That's certainly going to be the case, but it does seem from those reports about Hayden Hackney and his agent, and with the reports and the rumblings that are going on, it does feel almost inevitable that Hayden Hackney will be moving on this summer. Who Middlesbrough will choose to replace him with remains to be seen. I think there's a lot of work for Middlesbrough to do in the transfer market. We've already seen Josh Coburn leave the club this summer. There's interest, as I said, in Van den Berg. Finn Azaz is attracting interest as well, and there's been a lot of talk of players who could potentially leave Middlesbrough. There hasn't been a huge amount, really, in terms of players who are likely to be coming in at this point. There's been a lot of transfer rumours, but nothing really concrete at this point. But the noises coming out of the club are that work is going on behind the scenes with regards to compiling a list of potential targets. There's 5 key areas that Middlesbrough are looking to strengthen in, and that's centre-back, right-back, central midfield, right wing, and in attack, or right wing/wide forward. So they're the 5 positions that Middlesbrough are really looking at. They could potentially do with a left-back as well, and there has been some links with players like Alfie Doughty. Obviously, given the Rob Edwards links and the connection there. So that's potentially an area that Middlesbrough would look to strengthen. But it does feel like central midfield will be the priority. Now, Middlesbrough will be looking to sign a central midfielder regardless of what happens to Hayden Hackney. But potentially, if Hackney was to move on, it could be that Middlesbrough are going out there and trying to sign 2 central midfielders. You look at the other options in the squad, and you've got Aidan Morris, who is a nailed-on starter. So he's someone who is almost going to be one of the first names on the team sheet going into next season. Other than that, you've got Dan Barlasser, and it does feel potentially likely that he's going to be moving on this summer. He's been a squad player since he's arrived at Middlesbrough, really, and I think a lot of fans would be not too upset if he was to leave the club. So he's someone who's certainly upgradable. So I think if Middlesbrough were to lose Hackney, they'd certainly need a replacement for him to come into the starting lineup. I think also from a squad depth point of view, you probably want 3 central midfielders who are going to be challenging in there. Johnny Howson, you've got his situation, which will be interesting to keep an eye on. But as he gets a little bit older, and obviously last season we saw him kind of playing centre-back a little bit more towards the end of the season, you don't really know whether he'll be the person to sort of hang your hat on in the centre of midfield, where it's such an important area of the pitch. So I think Kieran Scott and his team have got the work out, definitely. As I said, the noises coming out are that they do have their finger on the pulse, and they are advancing with a number of deals. In terms of names, there hasn't really been a lot mentioned just yet in terms of players who could potentially be coming in. But now that we're into July, it's going to be really, really exciting, because we've just over a month to go until the start of the new season. Middlesbrough really need to sort of pull the finger out and get some of these deals over the line to give Rob Edwards the best possible start in a Middlesbrough. Well, in the Middlesbrough dugout. So, yeah, going to be an interesting couple of weeks. I'm really interested to hear from you on Hayden Hackney and what you think about him, whether you think he is going to be moving on, or whether you think there's any chance at all that he could still be a Middlesbrough player come the start of next season. So drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think about Hayden Hackney and where you think he could go next season as well. And if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like and subscribe. I've also signed up with Substack with Bonkers for Boro, where we're doing a weekly newsletter completely free of charge. So I've dropped the link into the bio underneath. So have a little look in there. Check it out, completely free of charge, as I said. So check that out. And yeah, I will catch up with you next time.